This video will walk through the sections of a lab report for a BSc 197 lab report. The first thing you will notice is that we have a clear and concise title: Investigating Levels of Catalase in Pepper Plant Tissue at Different Developmental Stages. This will tell the reader what to expect in the article below. The next section is the introduction. You'll notice that all sections are labeled in bold so that each section is clearly identified. The introduction section contains background information that is relevant to the experiment performed in the lab report. In this case, we are investigating catalase levels in plant tissues that are at different developmental stages. Some relevant information to this lab would be to define what catalase is, what it does in the cell, and some more additional information. For example, here I have described that catalase is an enzyme, what its structure looks like, what it does in the cell, the reaction catalase performs, and why it is important. All the information that I stated here was found in an external source, so I need to cite this source, and I have done so here. You should have at least 3 individual sources in your introduction, and this can include the lab manual. We will also want to include specific background information about the samples we are testing. For example, we are testing pepper plants at different developmental stages. We state that green and yellow peppers are the same organism at 2 different stages of maturity. So we're giving some background information to the reader so that they can understand this experiment. Finally, in your introduction, you will state your hypothesis for the experiment, which is an educated prediction about what we think will happen during the experiment using previous knowledge. Because of this, your hypothesis should have support from sources. Example: here I state research shows that in maize plants, in addition to other plant tissues, the majority of the proteome, the overall protein content of an organism, is downregulated as the plant tissue ages. And I've cited that source. Based upon this research, I hypothesize that younger green peppers will on average contain a higher concentration of catalase than the more mature yellow pepper. So I've clearly stated my hypothesis, why I believe this hypothesis, and I've given support to it. All right, the next section is your materials and methods. Now this section is going to be a little more difficult to write this semester due to being online. However, all the materials and methods used for each experiment are already outlined in the instructional videos and in the lab manual. You will just need to put these outlines in your own words. I cannot stress this enough. Please do not just copy the methods directly from the lab manuals. This is plagiarism. Your materials and methods should be detailed enough so that the reader could replicate the experiment by following this section. The materials and methods section, however, should not contain any bullet points or lists. It should be in paragraph form. For example, I explain each step of the experiment here, reporting volumes and concentrations of the solutions used. I've described here to measure the relative reaction rates of catalase standards. So I am describing how we are measuring our relative rates. Next, I am describing how we make our stocks, at what concentration, and this is all done in paragraph form. There is a copy of this sample lab report for you to look at in more detail, because I know I am going through this relatively quickly. The next section is your results section. This is where you will report all the data that is collected in an experiment. And you will do this in 2 ways. The first way is in paragraph form, where you will write out the data and trends observed. For example, here, After performing this assay on catalase standards, we see the trend by which the reaction rate increases as concentration increases. And we've also shown where this data is in our report. We'll get to this in just one second. We also report the average rate for all of our standards, and we show where this data can be found in our report. The second way that you will report your data is in tables and figures. And these tables and figures will be referenced in your paragraph. For example, here, I have shown that all catalase standard data reported in this study, included the statistical analysis, can be found in Table 1. In our results section, we will also contain the tables and figures. Here we see Table 1, and we have a figure or a table legend here. All tables and graphs should have a short legend where you will describe what the table or graph contains. Here, Table 1 says that reaction rates of catalase standards are investigated in this study. So we know that these are reaction rates of the catalase standards. Similarly, we show a standard curve was constructed using known concentrations of catalase, Figure 1. If we go look at Figure 1, we see the standard curve. So this paragraph tells the reader where to find these graphs. When making table legends go above a table in the text, and figure or graph legends go underneath the graph. Finally, the last section is your discussion and conclusion. This could be broken down into two sections, but I often find that it's easier to combine the discussion and conclusion. In your discussion, you will describe the implications of your data. In your results, you report your data. But in your discussion, you describe it or discuss it. It's here where you will state whether your hypothesis is supported or rejected based on the data collected. Here, I show a quick summary of our results. In this report, we show that on average, green pepper extract has a higher concentration than that of yellow pepper. This data supports our hypothesis that green pepper will have a higher concentration, and we give our reasoning. If your hypothesis is supported, you can provide additional sources to further support this data. Here, I say these results agree with current research that shows that in this plant, total protein content declined over time, and I provide my citation. You should provide a good amount of citation, or a good amount of support with citations in your discussion. I've also included my conclusion here, which is a quick 1 to 2 sentence summary. In conclusion, we show that younger green pepper has a higher catalase content per gram of tissue than that of older yellow pepper. And we give our reasoning here. All the sources cited in the lab report should be listed in MLA format in the reference list. Again, you should aim for at least 3 primary sources. A sample citation for the lab manual is here. This concludes the lab report tutorial.